I didn't really think that English is always going to be the next global language. I was in London like 2 weeks ago, and I was just in one of the restaurants. Funnily enough, there was this, excuse me because I can't really say this without saying it, I'm not being racist, this white blonde lady that had like a British accent. Excuse me, I don't know like how else to describe it, sorry. And she was just sitting there, and to my amazement, she spoke Chinese.
May I ask a follow-up?
So I'm just like wondering, like, why do you think that it's always, English trying to dominate all of the other cultures, when other Asian cultures as well are more than able to keep their own languages? For example, take me. I'm Indonesian, I'm Chinese, I can speak both Indonesian and Chinese, and at the same time, here I am talking to all of you people in English.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much. That concludes the rebuttal session. And now we will have a 15-minute session of questions from the audience. So if I can ask you to think very carefully. We'll take a minute to have a little breather because I think people have been a little bit tension in the air. If you can think of good questions to ask both teams, this is your chance, okay? Think carefully about the questions. Try not to personalize things too much. Alright, both teams are ready?
Is it continuous?
Yeah. Close yourself. Ready? Okay, so I will take the first question then from the floor. Think about the questions. Remember, at the end of the session, you're going to have to vote. So you're going to have to think of which team you think has given you the best arguments. Okay? Right. Michael, yes, Michael. Okay, first question.
I appreciate the debate. My question actually goes to both teams, and I would like
Maybe
you
one
guys
person
choose representative yet to answer that, because
okay.
I keep reading on the board behind them is that the House believes that the positive effects of globalization for both developed and developing countries outweigh the negative effects, which kind of includes both sides. And I understand that each team was focused more on sort of their own side, defending it.
Yes.
But since the statement is there, I really want to ask you guys to bring up, because maybe I've missed something, but it doesn't seem you've acknowledged that there is a negative side of globalization. You spoke specifically about the positive sides a lot. I mean, what do you think that's true, that globalization has negative sides?
Right. So
And the other team, the opposite actually, because you guys really talked a lot about
okay, so if you could
the
designate
negative
one
sides.
person from each team.
I'm just wondering what your take on that is, because
Excellent
it's sort of
question.
both included in what we're debating.
Okay,
tonight.
excellent question. So who's the person from the proposition who's going to answer that? To evaluate the negative effects. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I spoke of the environment, I tried to acknowledge that there is global warming happening. I just tried to give an alternate explanation. That doesn't mean that globalization is not something that we don't acknowledge, because scientific evidence of it actually happening and the change of temperature becoming higher cannot be just not acknowledged by anybody. But I just tried to explain that there is an alternate explanation for it available, except for this to be caused by globalization, at least in parts. Also, if you try to look at something, an organization, you're not going to get a 100% success rate. So I think that was Joseph trying to illustrate. We acknowledge that the UN has failures, unfortunately, but you're never going to get a 100% success rate, no matter what you try, because that would just be considered utopia. And also, Michael just informed me that in his talk, he did acknowledge that the spread of diseases is facilitated by globalization, but a rapid response is also facilitated by globalization, so that counteracts this effect, and that is that we do acknowledge negative effects and negative causes and alternate opinions, but we just try to give the positive spin that is also possible. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. May I ask somebody from the opposition, please, to give their response to, well, the question about the positive effects, possibly, of globalization?
Alright, so this debate may have gone a bit personal on some points, but yes, globalization does have positive benefits. We never try to deny that. Yes, in some cases the UN has done some things, and yes, in some cases you've had a bit of economic growth. But what we really lack in this debate is weighing of the arguments presented on both sides. And when you look at it, what it really comes down to is the fact that first let's start with the environment. Now, this is that climate change can be mitigated, that the environmental harms aren't that great. When you think about it, it's like your house is on fire. You can rush in, you can save a few things, but ultimately your house is still on fire. And even though globalization can in fact mitigate its effects, overwhelmingly many of these harmful effects still can't be completely resolved. And so in this case, for example, the depletion of this ozone absolutely outweighs any attempts at mitigation. But then, of course, they always talk about the economy, how free trade is good, and how economic growth has been increased. But when you look at the current situation right now, even if poverty has, in fact, been decreased in some areas, the exploitation of workers for poor labor, in some cases the force of labor itself, and the detriment of poor working conditions, although these may in fact contribute to a few greater wages for some workers, they still live in such a poor standard of living that the overwhelming harm to workers still outweigh any economic benefits. What ultimately happens is that most of the positive benefits go to those at the very top and not those at the bottom. And so the negative harms do outweigh. And lastly, this idea of culture, when you really look at what it comes down to, yes, we have food and some culture and some traveling going around as Elizabeth pointed out, but ultimately the harms to those who are most vulnerable in society, those who cannot be protected, and those who are suffering still outweighs. Because suffering of others is always going to outweigh our own marginal pleasures and delights. And for these reasons, we truly believe that globalization does in fact see the negative harms outweigh any positive benefits.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more questions from the audience, please?
So who's the
Stand up,
person?
please.
Who's the person that talked about how like Western entertainment is like dominant?
Did anybody speak about the dominance of Western entertainment? I think a couple of speakers did. Yes, what's the question?
What about films?
Well, not necessarily films. What about sports? What about
Sports.
the Olympics? And
Olympics.
World Cup. How can you explain that? How is that not just Western, it's also all over the?
It's a global, universal
Nadim, could
thing.
you-
Sports.
Nadim, could
Okay, so what's the question you wish to ask, and who to? Okay.
Nadim, could you repeat the question because we couldn't hear?
Yeah, can you just repeat the question to try and clarify the question?
Towards just because we couldn't hear
Oh, you couldn't
physically.
hear him, okay.
Could you, because he's speaking towards you,
Yes.
could you just repeat what he could
Right, so
repeat
the question is that there are certain activities that are global, like sports, for example, which are neither Eastern nor Western. So how can you say that they're a Western? Is that more or less what you've been saying? How can you say that they're a Western phenomenon and therefore a phenomenon that belongs to globalization? So may I ask somebody from the opposition to answer that? Was that please? Yeah, was it you? So are sports? Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so for example, in international sports, there are countries from all over the world, as you know. And what I would like to say about that is that the opportunities for all of the countries are not exactly equal because of the funding in different places. So there could be places that get more funding, more attention, and then there also could be places that don't have the same amount and therefore don't have the same opportunity.
Oh, hold on, just to let finish. So continue. Finish the point. Is that it?
I think like if a country pays or gives more or less money to a certain sport, it's like not an international aspect, it's a national thing.
Okay,
So-
well, let's just stop there for a minute. Okay. Another question then, please.
There's one more question in the back.
Okay, there's a question in the back. Yes. Back.
Well, I'd like to ask you guys if you'd be more in favor of a one world kind of environment, or would you prefer to have just the Western culture taking over the rest of the world? What would your idea be?
What is your conception of, I suppose, of the future?
Yeah.
Yeah, of the future. Do you see the world becoming much more westernized then as a result of globalization? I think that's probably what the question is asking. Anyone from the proposition?
I think Elizabeth summarized it quite well. We are not talking about a westernization of cultures. We're talking about a mixture of cultures, a synergy of cultures, where languages, cultures, and people live together. And I think it's not about this westernizing that you guys always pointed out, I think it's more about living together in one society, and I don't think we can say it's only westernized.
Thank you. Just 1 second. Okay, you wanted to say something maybe?
Well, this returns us back to the movies, for example, and the culture overall. Well, the thing is that Hollywood movies are popular because they are good. There is also lots of family, also some money. There is also some family, also some money. Guys, have you seen Lord of the Rings? Come on, guys, you're from New Zealand.
Why don't you watch the Double Worst Prada?
We have people watch good movies. That's a statement. Everyone knows Gerard Depardieu or whatever that is from France. Everyone knows it. Those are the people who are good, and that's why they're popular.
Okay.
And moreover, sports are equal because everyone has the same chance. That's why sports are equal, and that's why in the movie business, Hollywood films tend to be more popular.
Okay, should we just get somebody, just get a response? Yes. Just 1 second, just get a response from the opposition.
Excuse me, Joseph, hi. Joseph, hi. Who are you to be a judge of movies, and who are you to say these movies are better or these movies are not? Do you know about good Indian movies? Do you know about good Pakistani movies? Do you know about good Afghani movies? Do you?
Well,
have you seen enough of them to judge that, oh no, Hollywood movies are better, and that's why people watch them?
You didn't say it was better.
I said they are good, and people watch good movies.
So are you saying the others are not?
Convincing that they're
There are lots and lots of movies which are from outside the US which are great. And I've seen many of
Then
them.
why are people watching those? Because people watch movies that are good.
Okay, I think we're going slightly off the point here. So I think we're kind of getting involved in. Okay, so can we just focus back on the audience as well? Can we think of some other questions, please? Because there's quite a lot of information that we've been. Yes, at the back.
This is a question that was addressed indirectly by the proposition, but I would like to do it more actively. To the opposition, you talk a lot about language dominance and using English as a lingua franca, and even if Mandarin becomes the next lingua franca, is a lingua franca actually a bad thing? Because if everyone has their own normal language and then another language beneath them that they can communicate across with everybody, can't they communicate their culture better, like we're doing now in English? If I spoke to you in Burmese, would you know anything about me?
So, you want to answer that question? Yes.
So Lenny make a very good point about how people need to have some way to communicate. The problem is that right now, the form of communication is one that is wiping out all other forms. So we have a system that is set up so that if you only knew Burmese, you would be able to get very few places in this world, socially, economically, whatsoever speaking. And even if Chinese is in fact become dominant, that doesn't change the fact that according to the Endangered Language Project, right now over 4,000 languages are currently being endangered because globalization has made them almost unnecessary. In fact, many people in Arab nations like Saudi Arabia right now can't even learn Arabic because they're slowly unable to do it because their phones can't type Arabic letters, and so the language is itself dying out.
Okay, good. Okay, we're running out of time, so we only have time for one more question from the audience. On the floor. One final question, and then we're going to vote.
Yeah.
Come on.
Any other?
Anyone? Somebody else, Michael, you have asked one, but please, somebody over here, maybe girls in the back here. Come on. Okay, one question.
I would like to ask the position that seems to believe that globalization is such a bad influence in developing and developed countries. How do you expect the countries to develop, even though they're developed already? By isolating themselves from the world, or by having the free trade and trading with other countries? How do you expect it to progress in life with, as you guys were saying about diseases and stuff, how do you think you're going to improve the lives of others that are dying and everything? How do you think it's going to help by isolating yourself from the world? Is there
So
no
I think the question is more, yes. So if globalization, if you don't want to go with globalization, what alternative, I think, is that right? Is there an alternative to globalization? Somebody from the opposition, please. Is there what is the alternative then to globalization?
Okay. I mean, there are some examples, like we can talk about, for example.
North Korea.
Okay,
Right.
anyways, so I'll give an example from Saudi Arabia. There's a domestic abuse problem in Saudi Arabia, but there's an internally funded by the government campaign in order to eradicate or very dramatically decrease the amount of domestic abuse within the country. So there are self-motivated ways and ways in order to attract each culture of each different nation, because all cultures are definitely not the same, which is what we've been learning around here. But the reason why globalization will not work is because the cultures that each nation kind of has developed over the time that they've been.
I kind of didn't ask you. I didn't ask you why it wouldn't work. I'm asking you, what would you do if you didn't have globalization?
Okay, so basically the answer to that is that there are self-funded ways in terms of governments. It's a logical fallacy to say that just because we don't know any alternatives, it's a good thing.
Okay, right. I think that's probably time. Yes. I think Harry's got a few things to say. Yes. We're just going to wrap things up now. We're going to ask both teams to depart from the hall. Thank you very much.